Unreasonable Hospitality, The Remarkable Power of Giving People More Than They Expect, by Will Guidara. Picture yourself in a magnificent London hall that feels like royalty should be walking through at any moment. You're decked out in a tuxedo, sitting beside your business partner, surrounded by every culinary legend you've ever admired. The world's most celebrated chefs and restaurateurs are here, clinking champagne glasses. And somehow, you're completely invisible. You've earned your seat because your restaurant, 11 Madison Park, just got nominated as one of the world's 50 best restaurants. It's incredible, really. But right now, you feel exactly like that awkward kid on the first day of high school, clutching your lunch tray and scanning the cafeteria for a friendly face. You and Daniel, your partner, start placing bets on where you'll land. You guess number 40. Daniel, the eternal optimist, throws out 35. The lights dim. Music fills the room. An announcer strides onto the stage and cuts straight to it. To kick things off, coming in at number 50, a new entry from New York City, 11 Madison Park. 50. Dead last on the list. It feels like someone just punched you in the gut. You and Daniel slump in your chairs, staring at your shoes like they're suddenly the most fascinating things in the world. What you don't realize in that moment is that your faces are being broadcast on a massive 30-foot screen for everyone to see. All your heroes just watched you react to this incredible honor like it was a funeral announcement. The night crashes and burns before it even gets started. That single crushing moment could have been the period at the end of their story. Instead, it became the spark that ignited a revolution. It launched a journey that would carry that restaurant from the absolute bottom to the top of the mountain, earning the title of #1 restaurant in the world. How did they pull it off? The answer comes down to a simple two-word philosophy, scribbled on a cocktail napkin late that night, fueled by bourbon and a stubborn refusal to play it safe. That philosophy is the beating heart of the book we're diving into today, Unreasonable Hospitality, by Will Guidara. This isn't just another restaurant book. It's a blueprint for making people feel truly seen, for transforming everyday transactions into meaningful relationships, and for building teams that genuinely love making others feel special. Guidara's story proves that extraordinary success in any field isn't just about having an amazing product. It's about how you make people feel. By the time we're done, you'll understand the game-changing difference between service and hospitality. You'll walk away with a playbook for creating magical, unforgettable moments for customers, colleagues, and even people in your personal life. And you'll discover why the most powerful move you can make in business and in life is giving people more than they ever expected. The story of Unreasonable Hospitality doesn't begin in some glamorous kitchen. It starts on the steps outside a London hotel with two crushed restaurateurs, Will Guidara and his chef partner Daniel Hum. They'd just been ranked 50th out of the world's 50 best restaurants. After bailing on the awards party early, they sat there with a bottle of bourbon, cycling through what Will describes as the 5 stages of grief. First came denial. Wait, did that actually just happen? Then anger rolled in. Who do these people think they are? Bargaining followed, then a long stretch of depression, until finally, as the bottle got lighter, they arrived at hard-won acceptance. They had to face an uncomfortable truth. The restaurants at the top of that list, places like El Bulli in Spain or Noma in Denmark, hadn't just made incredible food. They'd changed the entire conversation. They'd introduced revolutionary ideas and techniques that influenced everyone who came after them. Will and Daniel looked at 11 Madison Park and asked themselves the tough question: what had they done that was truly groundbreaking? The honest answer was nothing. They were exceptional curators. They'd taken the best ideas from all the great restaurants before them and executed them beautifully. Their restaurant was stunning. It made tons of people happy. It had even earned 4 stars from the New York Times, which is basically climbing Everest in the restaurant world. But they hadn't changed anything fundamentally. In that raw, honest moment, A new dream took shape. Will remembered a paperweight his dad had given him years ago. It read, "What would you attempt to do if you knew you could not fail?" Fueled by that question and the last of the bourbon, they grabbed a cocktail napkin and wrote, "We will be #1 in the world." But writing it down was just the beginning. They needed a plan. Most top chefs had focused on revolutionizing what appeared on the plate. Will started thinking about something different, though. Something more timeless. Food trends come and go like fashion, but one human desire never fades. The desire to be genuinely taken care of. Daniel's food was already extraordinary. He was among the best chefs on the planet. So Will thought, what if they could match that culinary brilliance with an equally obsessive, passionate focus on hospitality? What if they dedicated themselves to making both their team and their guests feel like they truly belonged? Right before falling asleep that night, Will pulled out the napkin and added 2 more words beneath their audacious goal. Unreasonable hospitality. So what's the real difference between service and hospitality? This question consumed Will Guidara for years. The best answer came from a woman during an interview. She told him, "Service is black and white, hospitality is color." Let that sink in for a moment. Service, the black and white, is the technical delivery of what's promised. It's getting the right plate to the right person at the right table. It's competence and efficiency. It's doing your job correctly and professionally. Hospitality, the color, is how you make people feel about that job. It's genuine connection, warmth, the feeling that someone actually cares about your experience. Service is a monologue. Here's your order. Hospitality is a dialogue. It's about listening, connecting, and responding to needs people haven't even voiced yet. Will's entire career turned out to be a journey toward grasping this distinction. His education didn't start in some fancy classroom or boardroom. It started at home. Both parents worked in hospitality. His dad, Frank Guidara, was a major restaurant executive, and his mom was a flight attendant during the golden age of flying. But his most profound lesson came from a place of deep personal struggle. When Will was just 4, his mother was diagnosed with brain cancer. Over the years, her condition deteriorated. The radiation treatments devastated her, leaving her unable to use the left side of her body. Eventually, she lost the ability to speak and became fully quadriplegic. But she never stopped being present. She never stopped showing up. Every single day, she had her health aide wheel her to the end of their road to wait for Will's school bus. She couldn't speak. She couldn't hug him. But she could be there, waiting, with an enormous smile on her face. That smile, he says, was everything he needed. It taught him something priceless, what it truly feels like to be welcomed. This feeling, this magic of being genuinely welcomed, drew him to the restaurant world. For his 12th birthday, his dad took him to the legendary Four Seasons restaurant in New York City. It was the fanciest place he'd ever experienced. A server carved his duck on a gleaming cart right beside their table. When he dropped his napkin, a fresh one materialized instantly, and the server called him Sir. He describes the restaurant as casting a spell on him. For those 2.5 hours, everything else disappeared. That night, he knew exactly what he wanted to do with his life. His journey wasn't a straight line, though. It wound through learning experiences with some of the industry's best. After graduating from Cornell's prestigious School of Hotel Administration, he went to work for one of his heroes, restaurateur Danny Meyer. Meyer had built his company, Union Square Hospitality Group, on a revolutionary philosophy called enlightened hospitality. The core concept was simple but radical. He prioritized employees first, even before guests, even before investors. The logic was elegant. If you hire great people, treat them incredibly well, and invest in their growth, they'll naturally take exceptional care of customers. And they did. Working in Myers restaurants, Will discovered the power of shared language in building culture. There were catchphrases for everything. Constant, gentle pressure meant committing to continuous improvement, bit by bit. Be the swan reminded staff to appear graceful and calm to guests, no matter how frantically they were working behind the scenes. His favorite, though, was make the charitable assumption. This meant assuming the best about people, even when they weren't at their best. If an employee shows up late, don't lecture them. First, ask if everything's okay. If a guest is being difficult, don't assume they're just unpleasant. Maybe they're having the worst day of their life. Maybe they need more hospitality than anyone else in the room. This philosophy ran so deep that outsiders sometimes called the company a cult. Will's take? A cult is just what people in weak cultures call companies with strong ones. But as much as he loved this environment, his father, Frank, gave him crucial advice. He introduced Will to the concepts of restaurant smart versus corporate smart. Restaurant smart companies, like Danny Myers, thrive on creativity and hospitality. The people on the ground have autonomy to make decisions, connect with guests, and create magic, but they often lack the back-end systems, accounting, purchasing controls, that make businesses highly profitable and scalable. Corporate smart companies are the opposite. They have all the systems and controls locked down. They're ruthlessly efficient. But that control can suffocate creativity. The more you strip power from people on the ground, the less human and connected the customer experience becomes. His dad's point was crystal clear. If Will wanted to run his own company someday, he needed to master both worlds. He needed to be restaurant smart and corporate smart. So Will made a tough call. He left the warm, creative culture of Danny Myers' company and took a job in the basement of the MetLife building, working for his dad's old company, Restaurant Associates. He spent mornings in walk-in refrigerators counting oysters and calculating food costs. Afternoons were in the accounting department, buried in spreadsheets. It was boot camp and business school combined, and surprisingly, he loved it. He learned from a controller named Hani, an old-school master of numbers, just how powerful systems could be. He watched Hani spot a tiny anomaly in a food cost report, trace it back to skyrocketing lobster prices, and save the company a fortune in minutes, all without leaving his desk. Will realized that corporate controls didn't have to kill creativity. They could actually enable it by lifting financial worries off the chef's shoulders, freeing them to focus on food. But he also saw the dark side. At another restaurant, he moved a flower vase on the bar to help bartenders better connect with guests. 2 days later, it was back in its original spot. Corporate arts and design had stopped by and declared it wasn't his job to move things. Later, he fired a toxic but popular server, only to have human resources rehire the guy without even asking for his side. The lesson became clear. Taken too far, corporate smart becomes restaurant dumb. You have to trust the people on the ground. Armed with his dual education, Will eventually returned to Danny Myers' organization, this time running food operations at the newly renovated Museum of Modern Art. Here, he truly began forging his own philosophy, balancing the two worlds he'd mastered. This is where he developed what he calls the Rule of 95/5. The concept is straightforward. Manage 95% of your business with absolute financial discipline. Be ruthless about efficiency, but spend the last 5% foolishly. His first test came with a gelato cart he became obsessed with, designing for the museum's sculpture garden. Since the cart would share space with works by Picasso and Matisse, every detail had to be perfect. He partnered with a world-class gelato maker and negotiated an incredible deal on the product, even getting the cart for free. He managed 95% of his budget with laser focus. Then he found them. A company in Italy made these tiny, paddle-shaped, exquisitely designed blue plastic spoons. They were absurdly, almost heartbreakingly expensive. But he had to have them. He knew they were the one small detail that would elevate the entire experience. He spent that foolish 5% on those spoons. His boss was not happy until she saw the first profit statement from the cart. That last 5%, he argues, has an outsized impact on guest experience. It's the smartest money you'll ever spend. It's the unexpected detail, the generous flourish, the thing that makes people say, wow. Later at 11 Madison Park, this rule became central. It was why they could splurge on a rare, expensive glass of wine to end a pairing. It was why they could throw legendary, over-the-top staff parties. And it was why they could, on a snowy night, send a family who'd never seen snow before up to Central Park with brand-new sleds and a chauffeur. They'd earned the right to be foolishly generous because they were so disciplined the rest of the time. This unique blend of corporate discipline and creative hospitality caught the eye of a young, ambitious Swiss chef named Daniel Humm. Danny Meyer had just hired Daniel to elevate the food at 11 Madison Park, which at the time was successful but unremarkable. The food was improving daily, but the restaurant as a whole wasn't working. The partnership between kitchen and dining room was broken. Daniel told Danny Meyer he needed a new general manager, and he had someone in mind. What about Will? Will hesitated. He'd had bad experiences in kitchens, where chefs were treated like gods and dining room staff like servants. He told his dad, "I don't want to work for a chef. It has to be a partnership." So he and Daniel met for dinner. They discovered shared passion and fierce ambition, but Will laid out one non-negotiable condition. "I don't want to spend my life convincing you that what I do is as important as what you do," he told Daniel. "If it's not a true partnership, if what happens in the dining room doesn't matter as much as what happens in the kitchen, then I don't even want to start." Daniel, who'd worked in European kitchens where service staff weren't even allowed to speak to cooks, agreed completely. That night, they made a decision that would define their future. They'd run a restaurant led by both sides equally. Every major decision would be made together. It wouldn't be about what's best for the food or what's best for service. It would be about what's best for the restaurant as a whole. Their mission was born: to be the 4-star restaurant for the next generation. They wanted to marry the excellence and luxury of classic fine dining with the energy and fun of a more casual experience. They wanted to make fine dining cool. But when Will walked into 11 Madison Park for his first day as general manager, cool was the last word that came to mind. The restaurant was a disaster. There were two warring factions: the old guard servers used to the relaxed brasserie style, and the fine dining squad who'd arrived with Daniel and were frustrated that existing staff wasn't meeting their exacting standards. Everyone was miserable. There were no clear systems. One manager would tell a server to carry a tray one way, and 10 steps later, another manager would tell them to do it differently. Will knew his first job wasn't issuing commands. It was listening. He sat down with every single team member, from managers to dishwashers, and just heard them out. He learned that leaders don't need to cannonball into new organizations. They need to ease into the pool. He also started hunting for hidden talent. His dad had told him a story from Vietnam about a soldier nicknamed Kentucky who was a terrible shot and out of shape. Everyone had written him off, but his dad took time to know him and discovered that, having grown up in deep backwoods, Kentucky had a supernatural sense of direction. He couldn't shoot, but he could navigate dense jungle better than anyone. His dad moved him to the front of the platoon, and he became one of their strongest assets. Will found his own Kentucky in a food runner named Eliezer Cervantes. Managers complained that Eliezer didn't care about the food. And they were right. He wasn't passionate about it. But Will discovered something else. He was incredibly organized and a natural leader. So Will moved him from running food to being the expediter, the person in the kitchen who's like an air traffic controller, directing the flow of every dish to every table. It's one of the most stressful and important jobs in any restaurant, and Eliezer was a genius at it. Will had found his hidden strength. The most powerful tool Will used to transform the culture was something deceptively simple: a daily, 30-minute mandatory pre-meal meeting. This meeting, he believes, is where a collection of individuals becomes a team. It wasn't just about reviewing new menu items. It was about setting tone, sharing inspiration, and reinforcing the why behind their work. The way you do one thing, he believed, is the way you do everything. So even the printed notes for meetings had to be beautiful and thoughtful. He also started challenging the dusty, unspoken rules of fine dining. A manager corrected him for leaning on a table while chatting with a guest. "We never do that," the manager said. "Why?" Will asked. The manager didn't have an answer beyond, "Because that's how it's always been done." For Will, any rule standing in the way of genuine human connection was worth breaking. Soon, they were intentionally breaking all sorts of rules. They stopped giving guests a fancy, complicated French pastry called a cannelle as a parting gift, something more about showing off technical skill than giving guests something they actually wanted. Instead, they sent people home with a simple jar of delicious granola for the next morning. It was a humble, thoughtful touch that felt more like a gift from a friend than a flex from a four-star restaurant. As the culture began shifting, Will knew he needed to give his team an outlet for their own creativity. This led to one of his most powerful ideas, the ownership programs. He noticed that at most fine dining restaurants, beverage programs outside wine, like coffee, beer, or cocktails, were afterthoughts. The wine director was an expert in wine, not espresso. But his team was full of young, passionate people geeking out about these things in their spare time. So he took a risk. He found Jim Betts, an unrepentant coffee geek, and said, "The coffee program is yours now. Go make it awesome." He found Kirk Kellaway, who was obsessed with beer, and did the same. He found Leo Robacek, a bartender, putting himself through medical school, and put him in charge of cocktails. These weren't managers. Some were food runners, the lowest position in the dining room, but he gave them budgets, taught them how to manage them, and got out of their way. The results were explosive. The programs didn't just improve slightly, they became world-class. Kirk's passion was so contagious that soon 11 Madison Park had one of America's best beer programs. Leo Robacek went on to become one of the world's most famous mixologists. By tapping into his team's passions, Will had unlocked a new level of excellence. The team felt empowered, guests got better experiences, and the business thrived. Win, win, win. This idea of empowerment became the foundation for the next, even more radical phase of unreasonable hospitality. It started with a hot dog. One afternoon, Will was clearing a table of 4 European tourists heading straight to the airport. He overheard one say, "We've eaten everywhere. Daniel, per se, Momofuku. The only thing we didn't get to try was a street hot dog." A light bulb flashed in Will's head. He ran out to the Sabrits cart on the corner, bought a hot dog for $2, and brought it back to the kitchen. He then had to convince his world-class chef, Daniel Hum, to plate it. After some resistance, Daniel cut the hot dog into 4 perfect pieces and artfully arranged them on 4 plates with swooshes of ketchup and mustard. Will brought the plates out and said, "We overheard you, and we didn't want you leaving with any culinary regrets." The table went absolutely wild. They told him it was the highlight of their entire New York trip. They'd be telling that story for the rest of their lives. This moment unlocked a powerful realization. The most memorable gifts aren't about cost. They're about thoughtfulness. A $2 hot dog had more impact than a $1,000 bottle of wine could have because it was personal. It was a one-of-a-kind, improvisational moment of connection. It was, in a word, a legend. Legend became internal shorthand for these bespoke, over-the-top acts of hospitality. The goal became creating at least one legend every service. This was so important that Will created a new position, the Dreamweaver. The Dreamweaver's entire job was listening for opportunities and making magic happen. When a couple mentioned their vacation flight had been canceled, Dreamweavers turned a private dining room into a beach, complete with sand, beach chairs, and a kiddie pool filled with water for toe dipping. When a Spanish family dining on a snowy evening mentioned their kids had never seen snow, a Dreamweaver was dispatched to buy 4 brand-new sleds, and after dinner, a chauffeured SUV whisked the family to Central Park for spontaneous play. These legends became the engine of the restaurant's culture. They gave staff creative outlets and sense of purpose, and they gave guests stories to tell. A great legend, Will says, puts you right back in the moment, so you're not just recounting the experience, you're reliving it. But you can't rely on spontaneous inspiration alone, so they created a toolkit of pre-planned gifts for common situations. Guests flying out after meals were sent home with snack boxes for the plane. If a table joked about having hangovers the next day, they got rescue kits with strong coffee, Alka-Seltzer, and a muffin. They systemized these gestures so everyone on the team had the power to be generous, all the time. This commitment to unreasonable hospitality was working. The restaurant was climbing the 50 best list. But the journey wasn't without painful setbacks. After a major menu reinvention focused on New York City history and traditions, New York Times critic Pete Wells wrote a scathing takedown. The problem wasn't the food. It was the speeches. Will had become so obsessed with telling the story behind every dish that he'd scripted his team. He'd taken away their ability to be themselves, to have real conversations. He'd prioritized control over trust. It was a deeply humiliating public failure. But Will stood before his team, apologized, and took full responsibility. He realized that his greatest strength, fanatical attention to detail, could also be his greatest weakness if it led to micromanaging. He had to learn to trust them. They stripped back the scripts and returned to basics, empowering staff to connect with guests authentically. This led to the final, most profound evolution of the restaurant. As they ate their own 15-course tasting menu one night, Will and Daniel had a startling realization. They were bored. They counted how many times a server interrupted their conversation to set silverware, pour wine, or clear plates. Over the meal, it was 90 times. 90 interruptions. Their stated goal was being a place of human connection, yet they were constantly interrupting guests. It was time to get back to basics. They simplified their mission statement to just 2 words: delicious and gracious. They cut the menu from 15 courses to 7, focusing on making every bite unforgettable. And they did something truly radical. They eliminated the menu entirely. Meals now began with simple conversations. Captains would sit down with guests and just talk about what they felt like eating, what they loved, what they didn't. The experience was no longer a monologue delivered by the restaurant. It was genuine dialogue. This final evolution was the culmination of everything they learned. It was the perfect synthesis of excellence and hospitality, of control and trust, of being restaurant smart and corporate smart. In 2017, 7 years after being ranked dead last, Will and Daniel found themselves back in that awards hall, this time in Melbourne, Australia. They counted down from 50, then 40, then 10, then 5, then 3. Then the announcer declared the #1 restaurant in the world, 11 Madison Park. As Will stood on that stage, he was the first dining room person ever to accept the award on behalf of their restaurant. It was testament to their journey. They'd reached the top not just by changing what was on plates, but by fundamentally changing how they thought about their relationship with the people they served. They'd proven that excellence could take you far, but it was their relentless, joyful, and deeply human pursuit of unreasonable hospitality that had taken them all the way to the top. The story doesn't end there, of course. Life, like business, is about endless reinvention. Will and Daniel eventually went separate ways. When faced with the impossibly difficult decision of how to divide the company they'd built together, Will remembered his father's advice. Ask yourself what right looks like, then do that. For Will, what looked right was allowing the company to stay together, which meant one of them had to walk away from it all. So he did. But the philosophy he built remains. It's a reminder that no matter what business you're in, whether you're selling coffee, cars, or software, you have a choice. You can simply provide service, or you can join the hospitality economy. You can choose to be unreasonable. You can choose to give people more than they expect, and in doing so, make a little magic in a world that desperately needs more of it. What I absolutely love about Unreasonable Hospitality is that, at its core, it's a deeply optimistic book. It's built on the simple, powerful belief that making other people feel good is one of the most rewarding things we can do, not just for them, but for ourselves. Will Guidara calls it a, quote, selfish pleasure, and he's absolutely right. There's a unique joy that comes from watching someone's face light up with surprise and delight because of something thoughtful you did for them. The book is packed with grand theatrical gestures, the sleds, the beach, the street hot dog. It's easy to look at those and think, well, sure, they could do that. They were the #1 restaurant in the world. I don't have that budget or a team of dreamweavers. But focusing on the scale of the gifts completely misses the point. The real lesson isn't about spending more money. It's about investing more thought. That $2 hot dog had more impact than a $1,000 bottle of wine because it wasn't about luxury. It was about listening. It was about seeing another human being and responding to a simple, unstated desire. Hospitality, in its purest form, is the act of making someone feel seen. This is a principle you can apply anywhere, at any age, in any situation. You don't need a budget to practice unreasonable hospitality. You just need to pay attention. You can practice it in your part-time job by remembering a regular customer's name and asking about their day. You can practice it on a group project by bringing snacks for your team during a late-night study session. You can practice it at home by making your mom coffee just the way she likes it, without her having to ask. These small, intentional acts of generosity are the building blocks of strong relationships and strong cultures. They communicate, I see you, I value you, you matter. So how can you start putting this into practice right now? Here are a few simple ideas drawn from the book. First, define your color. Remember, service is the black and white, the baseline expectation. Hospitality is the color. In whatever you do, ask yourself, what is my color? What's the small, extra touch of warmth, personality, or thoughtfulness I can add? It could be a handwritten thank you note instead of an email. It could be a genuine, unhurried compliment. Find your unique way to add color to your interactions. Second, go hunting for one legend this week. Look for a single opportunity to do something small and unexpectedly kind for someone. Overhear a classmate stressing about a test? Leave an encouraging note on their desk. Notice your dad's exhausted after a long week? Take one of his chores off his plate without being asked. Don't ask permission, and don't look for credit. Just do it for the joy of giving the gift. And third, the next time you face a problem, whether it's a difficult customer, a frustrated teammate, or a personal challenge, ask yourself this powerful question: What's the hospitality solution? Instead of defaulting to the most efficient or logical answer, force yourself to think about what the most generous, human-centered solution would be. Often the answer to a problem isn't more control or efficiency, it's more connection. That was a deep dive into Unreasonable Hospitality by Will Guidara. We've certainly covered the main ideas today, but a summary is like looking at a photograph of a great meal. You can see what it looks like, but you can't taste the flavors or feel the warmth of the room. The true magic of this book is in the stories, in the quiet moments where Guidara's journey connects with your own. This summary is just an invitation. If anything we've talked about today has sparked something in you, I encourage you to grab a copy of the book, because reading it isn't just learning a new business strategy. It's an experience that can genuinely change how you see every interaction in your daily life. The link to the book is in the description below. Also, if you found this summary valuable, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. That way, you won't miss our next journey into another life-changing book from the billionaire's bookshelf. Your support means the world and helps us keep growing this community together. Let's keep learning.